This is a new voice for a new Scotland.
Indytruck Davy out the truck and in the house, in his office. Moving on to the review of the week, we'll start with Monday, the 10th of August. Okay. Monday, exam results, work assessments, and the Scottish Government's handling of it. The SQA is big in the news, alright? Even though that Friday, the First Minister apologised and promised to sort the situation out, it's still the lead story in Monday. Okay. So the SQA had still been doing the exam results based on the old measures, no taking into account the fact that Curriculum for Excellence is aimed at individual learning to make sure each pupil reaches their potential. Okay, so that's still the head story on Monday. Also Monday, Teaching Union EIS releases its results of a survey of teachers going back into full-time teaching. 29,867 teachers took part in the survey. 60% of the teachers agree with the decision to reopen schools full-time. 66% believe that there's not been enough mitigation to deal with social distancing and hygiene in schools. Alright? But they're quite happy to go back. 53% are not confident Test and Protect will be able to handle outbreaks within schools and communities, because remember, schools are always at the heart of the community, right? 63% of these teachers that were surveyed believe that elder students, year 5 and year 6, 16, 17-year-olds, should be wearing face masks. It should be mandatory for 16 and 17-year-olds to wear face masks. And 16% of teachers at the at-risk category don't believe that schools should be opened at this point in time. Alright, that's teachers that have got health conditions, or teachers that have got somebody at home who have got health conditions and who were previously shielding. So they don't believe that schools should be open yet. So Larry Flanagan of the EIS Union, he's the chief of the EIS Union, he was on BBC Radio Scotland on Monday to explain to people the schools were ready, the teachers were keen, but the Scottish Government and local authorities need to be on their A game. And they have to be flexible, and they have to be ready to shut schools and stamp down on any outbreaks in communities. A mixture of blended learning will be needed, and deep cleaning schools in order to give teachers and pupils confidence, and the schools estates must be part of the ordinary week. The EIS unit wants the Scottish Government and local authorities to be flexible, and they want to be able to move quickly from full-time learning to blended learning, where schools are deep cleaned and fit pupils will then be able to return, while pupils who have caught the infection and will be able to get into isolation. Okay. Right. Monday lunchtime, and the First Minister gave her daily public health briefing. After reading out the stats, the First Minister took questions from reporters, and she was asked about Boris Johnson's potential staycation, they were calling it, in Scotland. The First Minister makes it loud and clear that Boris Johnson, if he does come here for his 2 weeks holiday, we're not going to call it a staycation because it's no England's a different country. He has to comply with Scottish COVID-19 regulations, rules and protocols, and he's subject to the same scrutiny as any other citizen. So if he's wandering about and goes into a shop with no face mask on and it's deliberate, no health condition, then he gets fined, same as the bloody rest of us. He has to observe our 2 metres social distancing as opposed to England's 1 metre, so on and so forth. So when Boris comes here on holiday, he is going to be subject to the same laws as the rest of us, which makes sense, of course. And on the other side of that, folks, see when he gets here, he's probably going to disappear into a Highland estate. Well, while he's on the Highland estates, if you come across him, ignore him. If he engages with you, be polite, but make quite clear to him that he's a public servant for a government for another country. But do it politely, alright? Also Monday, it's revealed that a artificial intelligence company, Faculty, has been awarded a contract by the UK government to monitor all our Twitter feeds. Right? Now the idea is that a Faculty monitors our Twitter feeds on COVID-19 and feeds that information into the Cabinet Office. Now, that in itself is a breach of our privacies. It's an invasion of our privacies. But more importantly, it shows you how poor this Westminster government is, because they're getting a data mining company
to inform the Cabinet on public opinion on the government's policies on COVID-19, right? Or the pandemic. And it would appear that this particular government is making policies on the hoof based on public opinion. That's not a good way to run a government, but that's exactly what they're doing. This government isn't actually a government. It's just a campaigning machine. It's just running on public opinion. And it's altering its policies based on public opinion. It's not a great way to do things. Public opinion should have a bearing on governments, but their policies should be laid out before they're elected in their manifestos, and that's what they should be doing. Also, Monday, immigration is back on the cards, right? This is another diversion to take people's minds off of the rise in unemployment figures, the economic disaster that has been the COVID-19 pandemic, the fact that they went into lockdown too late, or shutting the furlough down too quick, and that Brexit's just around the corner. Okay. So this idea is that, Nigel Farage is still on the top of the White Cliffs again, and immigration and invasion is the problem. We're back to bombastic speeches based on Second World War terminology here. Invasion of the beaches and things like that. Let me inform you a wee bit here of what's going on down there, right? The shortest stretch for Europe to the UK is between Calais and Dover. It's 14 miles, right? And what's happening is there are people taking to dinghies, desperate people taking to dinghies with outboard motors and trying to make that dangerous crossing. Okay. Now this so-called invasion, since the turn of the year, January, there has been 2,000 people made that crossing. We're in August. We're in month 8. So that'll be 250 people a month. It's not an invasion. It definitely is not an invasion. What it is it's just distractions to divert away from this populist, disastrous Tory government that is in Westminster. That's exactly what this immigration carry-on's all about. So there's no invasion of the beaches down there. Anyway, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, takes to the TV to tell people that she's going to get the Navy and the Air Force to scare these desperate people off for coming to the UK. A UK and a Western society that has been part of the fiascos that are going on in the Middle East. Alright? And it's also announced on Monday that Boris Johnson's thinking about changing immigration law to deter people from making that crossing. It's writing policy in the back of a fag packet, and it's reactionary government, and that's never going to be a good thing. Right? Tuesday 11th of August. Schools start a phased return in Scotland. The morning bulletins are full of parents, teachers and pupils' reactions, which is quite right. Also in Monday's bulletin, it's reported that the UK government's Eat Out to Help Out scheme has been used 10 million times in the first 2 weeks of being open, right? Now what's interesting about that policy is, right, and it's reckoned that it's going to cost, the month of August, it's going to cost the UK government 50 million quid for this Eat Out to Help Out. But what's interesting about that policy is that the poor are going to food banks and the middle classes are getting a discount to go to restaurants. You couldn't make this stuff up. You really couldn't. We've got people starving. Malnutrition's on the rise. They've seen lots of people suffering from malnutrition in hospitals in England. And I'm sure there's a fair share of them here in Scotland as well. But the middle classes are getting half-price meals at the local restaurants. You couldn't make that stuff up. Anyway, it's reported that that scheme has been used 10 million times in its first 2 weeks down there. Also Tuesday, new voting app is launched for the Scottish Parliament. It will allow MSPs to vote remotely wherever they are, and it will assist in social distancing in the Scottish Parliament. So, the thing about that new app is, the first time it was used was later in the week, in the vote of no confidence for John Swinney, but we'll get to that when we get to Thursday, okay? Also in the morning bulletin, the Scottish Government's COVID-19 economy recovery plan is being discussed. Benny Higgins, the guy that set up Tesco Bank, the guy that set up the Scottish Investment Bank, and he's the guy that chairs the COVID recovery group, is on BBC Radio Scotland to explain the COVID recovery plan. Now, the plan has 25 recommendations. It can be viewed at scotgov.scot. But they only go on to talk about 5 main points. They talk about a guaranteed work scheme for the 16 to 24-year-olds. Don't know how they're going to finance it, but I'm sure they'll be creative. They also talk about they adopt an apprentice scheme for apprentices that were already in training, but their companies have had to let them go because of hard times. He goes on to talk about Scottish Investment Bank, what an important part it's going to play in the way future. It also talks about the green recovery and the jobs that are going to be involved in a green recovery, moving from petrochemicals into renewable energies. And it also talks about the need to move from the sort of economic model we're now on to a well-being model. Okay, we've spoken about this before, where the economy works for the people instead of the people working for the economy. It has to be done, it has to be rebuilt from scratch. Benny Higgins and the COVID recovery group believe that this is the time to start from scratch and build universal basic income, that sort of thing, and making the economy work for the people instead of the people working for the elite, the 1%. Alright. So, also Tuesday, the employment figures were released. Unemployment in Scotland stands at 4.5%, with 124,000 people seeking work. Now, seeking work and out of work are two different figures. I hope we understand that, right? Right, over the second quarter of the year, an additional 15,000 people lost their jobs in Scotland, and an additional 11,000 people left the workforce who are not of retirement age, but who do no longer intend to go looking for work. Also Tuesday morning, it's announced the details of the UK government's once-in-a-generation shake-up of planning in England is announced. And what it transpires as is a power grab against the English councils. Planning is to be centralised at Westminster. And what they're going to do is appoint designated growth zones. Now, they designated growth zones will have light planning permission. Basically, what's happened down there is after the Robert Jennick carry on and the cash for planning, the UK government have taken planning out the hands of the councils and taken it into central government. They're going to set up planning zones and their pals will have a field day building on land with very little need for planning permission or building regulation. So if you're going to move to England, you're going to buy a house, don't buy one in a planning zone, a growth zone, because there's going to be light touch regulation to builders in the areas. Also Tuesday, Education Secretary John Swinney addresses Holyrood to sort out the pupil assessments debacle. Mr Swinney apologises to the country, apologises to students, and says that the pupils will get the teachers' assessments as their new result. So, attainment in Scotland is just shot through the roof. The credibility of the exam results, well, we'll need to see how that goes going down the line. You know what I mean? Also Tuesday, Bojo the Clown tells the UK public that economic recovery is a long way off. Aye, he's no kidding, we're talking decades here. A decade and a half here. But anyway, Bojo tells the people that there's going to be a long road to recovery for COVID. Never mentioned Brexit. But hey, we're getting used to them not mentioning Brexit. That's part of what all this crap down there is, with immigration and things like that. It's all part of what they're hiding. Right? And then in the afternoon, a smiling Rishi Sunak appears in all the online editions of the newspapers to tell us that hard times have arrived. Hard times have arrived. These clowns are no joking. Hard times have arrived. They shut down too early. They locked down too early in COVID. They're ending the furlough scheme too early. And Brexit's just around the corner. You couldn't make this up. So a smiling Rishi Sunak is in the papers everywhere telling everybody hard times have arrived. You're no kidding. And the reason why he's smiling is the hard times don't affect him. You know, they created the problem, man. Moving on to Wednesday. More schools get back to normal. The BBC Radio Scotland went out and did a special report. They showed up at the school gates, went into the schools, had a wee look at how things were going, you know what I mean? The Education Secretary, John Swinney, was on BBC Radio Scotland that morning to explain the protocols that have been put in place to allow schools to operate properly full time. And then he's asked about the vote of no confidence in him, which is going to happen later in the week. Mr Swinney says he'll answer to Parliament. Alright. Also Wednesday, the proposed hate crime bill comes back into the news. Alright. This time, author Val McDermott weighs into the argument. Val says, like the rest of us are saying, that this bad piece of legislation could cause or could stifle freedom of speech. Now, it's a poor piece of legislation. Police Scotland thinks it's a poor piece of legislation. The Qualities Commission here in Scotland thinks it's a bad piece of legislation. The third sector think it's a bad piece of legislation. And the ethnic groups who this legislation has been put into place to protect or to help protect think that that is a bad piece of legislation as well. So nobody thinks this is a good piece of legislation. Mr. Humza Yusuf, the Justice Secretary, and the cross-party group that drew this up, including Anas Sawa, ought to have a long look in the mirror and take this off the table and start again. Right, also Wednesday, it's reported that since the pandemic reached the UK, 1 million people have lost their jobs. It's the tip of the iceberg, folks. You know what I mean? I mean, last month, major companies shed 120,000. And we're not talking about small and medium-sized enterprises here. We're talking about big enterprises reported shedding 120,000 jobs. Remember, small and medium-sized enterprises don't even make it into the news, but they're the backbone of the UK economy. So, since COVID-19 reached our shores, 1 million people have lost their jobs. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Once the furlough scheme unwinds and the Brexit hits, we're looking at unemployment. I've seen one report estimating unemployment about between 6 and 9 million. Can you imagine that? But when you realise that depending on how negotiations go with the EU, that the UK economy is going to shrink by 7.5% of GDP to 9% of GDP, and you take it as 10%, almost 10% of the economy, then 10% unemployment is feasible here. Or 8 or 9 million people on the dole is feasible here. So, hard times are ahead right enough. Also Wednesday, a major incident is called after the derailment of the 0638 Aberdeen to Glasgow Queen Street train. In the incident, 3 people lost their lives when the train derailed just west of Stonehaven. Fortunately, there were very few people on the train, including the train staff, the conductor and the driver. I believe there were 9 people on the train. So, a disaster and a half. First Minister's questions back on Wednesday. What a laugh that was, Baroness Ruthie Tank Commander Ruth Davison took to the front bench, deputising for Dross Douglas Ross. Okay, she went with the SQA assessments debacle. The First Minister showed her no mercy. None. And everybody will have seen this online by now. The First Minister gave her absolutely no mercy. She slaughtered her. Absolutely slaughtered her. And tell her she was in no position to come into that chamber and talk about a democratic responsibility, or upholding democracy, since she's bugging off to the Ermine chamber down the road. But anyway, the First Minister scalped her one. I think the correct term is a bahookie on a plate. So, Ruthie Tank Commander got her bahookie scalped and sent after the naughty step. Right, up next was Richard Hu for Labour. Aye, Richard Hu, you're absolutely up. Richard Leonard, right. And he also went on the SQA. And the assessments, he demanded that John Swinney's better do his job. And as usual, the First Minister played with Richard Hu. Because let's face it, he's not very bright. I've said this before, he's got 2 brain cells. One's linked to Jackie Bailey. So, the First Minister plays with him a wee bit like a cat playing with a bit of string, and then she whopped him off, whopped his bahookie and sent him after the naughty step and all. Right. Next up was Patrick Harvey, the Greens. Now, Patrick went on evictions for rented accommodation during the pandemic. Now, Patrick Harvey wants the scheme extended into the middle of next year. We'll get to that a wee bit further down the line, okay? So, the First Minister told Patrick to come and have a word with her, and they'll see what they can do. Alright? Now, Wee Willie Rennie went on. Well, who bloody cares what Willie Rennie went on? Nobody ever bloody well listens to Willie Rennie. I mean, he did get his turn to speak, I can tell you where it was if you really want to know. Never mind what we will any had to say. The Lib Dems are bloody well irrelevant. Right? Also on Wednesday, the Financial Times reports that Chancellor Rishi Sunak is thinking of postponing his budget because of fears of a second wave of COVID-19. Well, it looks as if there is going to be a second wave of COVID-19 in England, and if there is in England, then there will be here, because there's nothing we can do to stop it from crossing the border. Also on Wednesday, this is quite interesting, Wednesday, UK government to spend £355 million to get companies in Northern Ireland ready for customs checks on goods shipped to the rest of the United Kingdom. That will be the customs checks that Boris Johnson, Bojo the Clown, told the people of Northern Ireland in December 8th last year won't exist and they won't have to worry about it. Well, that's another Tory lie blown out the window, because at the moment they're out in Northern Ireland trying to get companies prepared for customs checks for goods being shipped into the rest of the UK. So, as I've said this before, Northern Ireland has been annexed by the EU. Simple as that. Annexed. It's only part of the UK now in name only. It is part of the EU, and Stormont's going to have to work very, very closely with the Parliament in Southern Ireland, because once these customs checks and all that in place, and the formality of Northern Ireland being annexed by the EU are complete, then Westminster will totally eject Northern Ireland. They will absolutely ignore Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland will then have to look to Southern Ireland, and probably reunification will be on the cards. Another Tory lie exposed. Northern Ireland is basically being annexed by the EU. Also Wednesday, the First Minister announces that Aberdeen's staying in lockdown for another 7 days. Alright. On to Thursday the 13th of August. English A-level results are released. The same fiasco that went on here in Scotland commences in England. Right. What was interesting about that was yesterday, Tory MPs and Tory MSPs were deleting tweets about the Scottish Government and the fiasco up here at a rapid rate of knots. It was almost comical. Right. Keir Starmer also weighs in, and he says he wants a quick resolution. See, when it comes to weighing in, Keir Starmer's not very good at it. Keir Starmer weighs in saying he wants a quick resolution to the problem down there. So, Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary soon there, says that pupils will be able to appeal, and that appeals will be dealt with swiftly. With the amount of students there is down there, swiftly? I don't think so. And as they don't really have an appeals process that is already in existence, it'll be another Tory disaster. Also Thursday, this is interesting, we go back to Tuesday, right? Also Thursday, the Scottish evictions ban has been extended and will now run till March 2021. A vote winner for the SNP and a vote winner for the Greens, because Wednesday, the First Minister tells Patrick Harvey, come and have a chat with me about the evictions and extending the ban on evictions. Next day, ban on evictions being extended. So I take it Patrick Harvey and Nicola Sturgeon sat down and had a cup of tea and had a chat about it and had a look at how they're going to finance this. You know, because let's face it, if people have no money to pay their rent during COVID, they're going to have huge rent arrears when COVID's over. So they're going to need assistance to pay off these rent arrears, because landlords are still going to be paid. Because landlords are going to make their living as well. Right, Thursday, investigation into the Aberdeen train derailment gets underway. The names of the deads are released. Train driver Brett McCulloch, conductor Donald Dinney, and passenger Christopher Stotchbury lost their lives in the incident. Very sad, and the thoughts go out to their families. It's a tragic event, of course. You know, Scotland's Transport Secretary Michael Matheson and UK Transport Minister Grant Sharp both visited the site of the incident, and so far it's looking like the storm on Monday night through to Tuesday up there in the northeast played a big contributing part in this tragic event. Alright. Also Thursday, it's speculated that COVID-19 cases in Scotland are on the rise. Well, you know, it was always bound to happen. With the lockdown easing, because it really has to ease, the economy needs to go up and gone again. Travel and tourism opening up again, and leisure. You know, imported cases were bound to happen as people from other parts of the UK, especially England, travel to Scotland for what they're calling staycations, what we're calling a foreign holiday if they come from England. Alright. Thursday, the debate on the motion of no confidence in John Swinney, Education Secretary. The Education Secretary's handling of the results gets underway. It was a bad-tempered affair. I don't know if any of you seen it. Bit of a bad-tempered affair. But the motion of no confidence is defeated as Green MSPs as well as SNP MSPs vote the motion down. John Swinney keeps his job as Education Secretary and in the Education brief for the moment. Now, although John survived this vote of no confidence, you know, is he going to be shifted for that brief at the next cabinet reshuffle? I don't think so. Unless the next cabinet reshuffle is after the next general election. Because if there's a cabinet reshuffle before it and he's moved out of position, then opposition parties will make hay with that. So John Swinney's position as Education Secretary is pretty secure at the moment. Also on Thursday, it's announced that Alpha Solway has been awarded or has won a £53 million contract with the Scottish Government to provide PPE to National Health Scotland. National Health Service Scotland, or the Scottish National Health Service, whatever you want to put it. It's a great boost to Annan and the local community because it had been hit hard after the UK government paid Young's £3 million to move production and packaging for Young's Foods, Young's Seafoods, for Pennies and Annan to Hull. Right? So, Alpha Solway winning this contract will make a big difference in the area and it will help the economy of the area. I don't think it will be able to replace some of the jobs that have been lost down there. I'll not replace all the jobs that have been lost down there, but at least it'll start to bring more money into the economy. Okay. So on to Friday the 14th of August. It's all about the A-level results in England. This morning's papers are all for you. The Times goes on, well, Times being a Tory paper, it says the teachers down there had overestimated the pupils' works, so they were right to be downgraded, right? The Star goes with Gavin Williamson's epic education failure, alright, so that's what the Star goes with. The Eye went with unfair A-level results must be reversed. The Guardian reports that the poorest areas and the poorest people down there got the worst exam results. And the FT, the Financial Times, goes on backlash against UK ministers over A-level fiasco. So the whole circus that we seen up here a few weeks back is now in full flow in England. Alright? Now, of all the papers down there, there's a couple of them that didn't run with that headline, yeah? There's a couple of them that just stayed away from the A-level things on the front page. Right? So the Metro goes on Boris Johnson to further lift lockdowns in England. Basically, Boris Johnson, even though there's a rise in cases of COVID down there, the death rate's still quite high, Boris is moving to open up the rest of the English economy. Okay. So, that second wave that the Chancellor's worried about, and why he's delaying his budget, it's about to happen. Or it'll very shortly be here, because Boris Johnson intends to open up the rest of the English economy. Alright? It's also announced that the air bridge between France and the UK has been collapsed. It's been closed. Rising cases in France. So, anybody that's in France at the moment, when they return, they're going to have to go into self-isolation for a fortnight. And anybody that's about to go on a trip to France, well, when they come back, they're going to have to get into isolation for a fortnight or quarantine for a fortnight. Okay. Up here, the papers are a wee bit quiet this morning. They're going on the train derailment, of course. Experts here are calling for the information on testing for effect to be published by the Scottish Government so that they can see that the system's working well or no. Apparently the Scottish Government hasn't made this data available yet. Alright. Also, new COVID rules come on into play today for leisure, for pubs and restaurants and other leisure facilities that are opened here in Scotland. Social distancing's back in the cards in these places. Of course, contact tracing. It's now mandatory that every pub and every restaurant takes the names and addresses of the patrons that go there. So that in the event that the pubs they send in an outbreak, then they'll be able to trace everybody quickly and get and tappy any outbreaks which are linked to any restaurant, pub or leisure facility that's open. Right? And finally, Perth Scotland released a report this morning that says that it's going to take quite a while to sort out the problems in the A83. As we know, the A83 was washed away again on Monday night with the storms. So the military road's open. They've got the military road open again, so it's no a 60-mile diversion. It's only a small diversion. But the A83 itself, it's looking as if it's going to be months and months and months before it's ready to be reopened safely. They're going to have to shore up the hillside again, and then they're going to have to do something about actually putting a tunnel, a concrete roof over the top of that area, so that if there is a landslide, it'll go over the top and the road will be protected beneath. You know what I mean? Right, folks. That's it for the weekend. That's it for this week. Listen, we've seen the cases in the daily tracker rising and settling and rising and settling. This virus isn't going away, right? Now, I know there's people out there that think the virus is a hoax and all this sort of thing, but I'm not getting into that debate. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But as far as I'm concerned, just follow the guidelines, alright? Facts, alright? Face coverings when you're on public transport and public buildings, supermarkets, shops, that sort of thing. You know the drill. Avoid large gatherings, okay? Clean your hands and hard surfaces regularly. And if you have symptoms, book a test, go into isolation, and look after each other. Look after yourselves. We need to stay on top of this. We need to get everything up and running again. Brexit's coming. The economy's already taken a bad enough hit. Look after yourselves. Enjoy your weekend.
Have a nice day.
This is a new voice for a new Scotland.
And in life,